Hi, Andrew. How are you?
I'm well. I'm so happy that we're finally doing this.
I know. We've talked about it for a while and
Yeah.
just to finally merge the energies.
Yeah. And we've
Because
had
I
several conversations already about
yeah,
this. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. And so, as we decided to put this out for everybody, you'll see that there's like a little flow that we get into, and hopefully we're not hard to keep up with as we just kind of go like through 1,000 different topics all at one time.
Yeah. It's funny. I have friends. I don't realize how abstract my thought processes are sometimes until I have friends really close who are like, wait, what? I'm
Right.
like, I thought I explained it really, really clearly. And they're like, no, this is what you said. I'm like, oh, yeah, I did leave out a little bit of context. I tend to jump from like,
Right. It's like, can you follow my bouncing ball?
yeah. And it
It's like,
always resolves. I always come back to the point
right.
eventually.
But you really do have to follow it.
Yeah, you're buying a ticket for a ride here, people. So just trust the process and stay
I
with it.
had a friend of mine and I were having this conversation, and my daughter texted me. She goes, "Do you realize that neither one of you complete a sentence?" She said, "There's no way to follow this conversation. You guys don't speak in full sentences. I have no idea where either one of you are." And I'm like, "We do."
That's hilarious. I love that.
I know,
I
isn't
love
it
that.
great? So we wanted to kind of give an overview of some of the crazy energies that we're in right now. Andrew was talking about just the need to sleep,
Yeah.
just the
And some of the
exhaustion.
themes that we see kind of recurring. And, I find, I've been going on my seventh year now with my practice, and I find that there are always consistencies. But
Yeah.
I have to say, I am pretty blown away at how pretty much everybody I'm talking to, and then whenever I post something on my Facebook page about, sort of what's happening physically, I'm getting so many comments.
Yeah.
It's like I craft all these memes and I do all my video work and I think, oh, and it gets like a certain amount of likes, and that's fine. I'm not in it for the likes. It's just always surprising to me what resonates. And those posts about the energy and the physical
Yeah.
symptoms that many of us, those are the ones that are getting a ton of dialogue and a ton of conversation around them. So I think it's important just to acknowledge
Hmm.
more than anything, so that anyone who's watching who perhaps doesn't have a lot of connections in this community or is just sort of moving into this experience of a conscious life, they're not crazy. It's not just you.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I personally am finding a lot of fluctuations in my energy. I was sharing with you this morning. I usually am up between 6 and 7 in the morning. I have stopped drinking coffee, which for anyone who's been watching me for any length of time knows I was bowing to coffee for a long
Right.
time. That was my God. And I can't, I was at like 2 cups of coffee a day. Then I was down to one. Then it was like even half a cup was just
Yeah.
wreaking havoc on my gut and on my nervous system and my energy. So I am drinking tea now. But still, I wake up between 6 and 7. I have a few good hours where I'm really clear and really focused and super productive. And then whoom, it's like just the wind gets knocked out of me and I
Yeah.
just have to go sleep.
Yeah.
I just have to go sleep. And then I'm fine for a few more hours and then I'm back to sleep. And, I'm thinking of something that I remember hearing, that the idea of an 8-hour sleep cycle is not,
I've seen
it's
that.
a modern creation.
Yeah.
It's a modern creation. It used to be you'd go to bed, sleep for 3 to 4 hours, you'd get up sort of early morning, 2, 3 a.m., have another few hours of being awake, then go back to bed for another 3 to 4 hours. So this modern cycle, it feels to me, and you and I were just talking about this, it feels to me like what's occurring now is a breakdown of conditioning and programming, not
Absolutely.
just at the abstract idea level, but at the actual physical way of how we live our lives and how we navigate the world in this human experience.
Which then means it is coming in and it's changing through the DNA. And we talked also about the fact that when it's that core DNA changing, that sometimes the body has to shut down for that. And I always equate it to like a computer. When you are, downloading whether it's an upgrade or a new program onto your computer, if you have a ton of windows open, either it doesn't download properly or it takes freaking forever.
Yeah,
So it has to shut down all the windows, let it download, it's done, then you just restart. And that's kind of what's happening to us. It's
yeah,
like we're having to like close all the windows, and sometimes I find like even with this massive exhaustion, I can lay down for 15 minutes. That's it.
yeah.
And then I'm back up like, okay, I don't know what that was. I drilled a little bit, but, and we're gone, you know?
Yeah, and it's 15. I mean, I'm a professional napper. That is one of my hobbies. I've been taking naps since 19 years old, and and I've even trained my mind to, I will see, in the beginning, I would say, okay, it's 3 o'clock. Then I would picture, 3:15 as an image on a digital clock, and I would always wake up 15 minutes on the dot.
Nice.
So I have programmed my body and my mind to allow these naps to occur. But it was always sort of at that lighter state of sleep. Now I'm going like to sleep
Deep,
for 15 minutes.
really
It
deep.
feels like a REM cycle is occurring in 15 minutes
Yeah.
because I'm having dreams. I'm
Yeah.
having vivid experiences thinking, wake up, oh my God, what day is it? Mom, where are you? And it's been 15 minutes. So there are things, and also with food, we talked about this. Like,
Yeah.
I am ravenous all of the time, but I can only eat small amounts and then my
Yeah.
body's full. It's
Yep.
crazy to me how little it takes to satisfy that hunger,
Right.
but how consistent it is and how specific my body is saying, like, I've always been a meat eater. I've come and gone with being vegetarian and vegan since I was 14 years old. It's always been this sort of cyclical thing with me. And I have several times tried to consciously step away from eating animal protein. And my body has always said, no, I need it. Now it's different. Now my
Yeah.
body is saying, absolutely not. I
Yeah.
mean, it's been what? I think I had one piece of bacon the past 4 months, and
Wow.
that's it. I mean, I'm still doing dairy and eggs occasionally, but my body just does not want animal protein. It's like it physically turns my stomach.
Wow.
And I love a cheeseburger.
Right. Well, and that was how I eventually went vegetarian. It was like, it was just, I didn't, I couldn't. And I actually struggled like cooking, meat for my family. I just wanted nothing to do with it. And then the body was like, you need this again,
Yeah.
and now it's just, I'm learning how to eat more intuitively. Like, what is it that I'm wanting? And I'll get flashes of things. It'll be like a cucumber. I'll like
Right.
literally go, I'm going to go eat a cucumber now.
Yeah.
And just trying to, I don't know, listen. But I think, we talked about the DNA is being rewritten, right? But there's also this thing going on where we are being asked to master not only the form, but our emotions. It's like everything that, can we take command?
Yeah.
And you can't take command of something if you're not listening to it. So
Totally.
it's like almost like these stages of like, okay, first listen to the body, no matter what it says, throw whatever belief system is out there, throw it away. And, like, listen exactly what is it that the body's saying. Then it's, okay, body, now I'm going to command this, and I'm going to do it through physical movement. I'm going to do it through talk. I'm going to do it through my emotions, and I'm going to command this experience. And it absolutely, it's a work in progress,
Yeah.
because we're not trained to do that.
And we haven't been taught to respect the wisdom and the voice of the body, because
Right.
it does have a very real voice and its own needs and requirements.
It does.
It was 2016 that when I had this chronic shoulder pain, that had been going on at that point for about 8 years. And so that was at that point in time when I really started consciously dialoguing with my body about, what is this? What can I do? What do you need? What am I not doing?
Mhm.
Or should I do whatever? And it was, exactly what you said. I got to the point where I would take my body with me everywhere. And, you laugh at that, but consciously, I think we have been trained to believe that our body is just a dumping ground for
Right.
whatever we want, whatever we need. It doesn't matter. Just fucking do it. Indulge yourself, whatever. But at that time, I was like, okay, let me talk to the body. And I remember specifically, I would take my body to the grocery store. And it would be a little bit laborious at first, because it was literally everything I was going to buy. I would grab it, I would sit with it. Does this feel like it? And I remember specifically one time I had this craving. I was like, oh, it was in the summer. I want ice cream. I want ice cream. And I went to the store and I said, okay, body, which flavor do you want? And the body said, actually, I love cold and sweet, but I want watermelon. I don't want ice cream.
Yeah.
And so I went and got watermelon. It was like a freaking orgasm eating this watermelon. My entire body was like, yes, yes, yes. It was like the scene when Harry met Sally when they're in the
Right.
diner. That was my body's response to this
Right.
watermelon. Oh my God. The thing that struck me was the joy that was present through just the simple act of eating when I allowed my body's voice
Yeah.
to be part of the decision.
Yeah.
And I think it's
One.
important. Sorry to cut you. I think it's
Right.
important to note as we're talking about this, we're not telling people what to eat or
Oh,
what
no.
not to eat. It is an individual choice.
Oh,
And so you
absolutely.
have to honor what you are being called to consume or put in your body.
Well, and that brings up like, I was working with some of the ascended masters, and they had said to me, they said, map your body, go from your big toe all the way to the top of your head and be like, okay, big toe, connect in with it, feel it, wiggle it. What do you need? And hear it. What is it? Or see it or feel it, however you receive information, and act on it. So I remember one time I was working with, I don't know what it was. I think it was like an ankle, and it's like, you could use more water. I'm like, okay, fine, I'll go drink some more water. And, but it's honoring that intelligence, because if you can hear all that is this magnificent organism that is the body, it's really, it's your vehicle, it's your machine, it's the temple for your soul. And can you listen to it and throw all the belief systems away? Because that's the biggest thing. I see so many people who harm themselves over belief systems because, like you said, with the diet, it can fluctuate depending on where you are, what you need, and what's going on in the body.
Yeah,
But to mandate over a belief system instead of listening to the intelligence, it gets us in trouble.
it does.
It gets us in trouble.
It does.
And
And I think,
so,
the vegetarianism and the veganism is a choice that I have made. And times when my body was like, I need this protein, I need the
yeah,
density of this. And me, from my moral perspective, saying, no, I'm an animal lover. How can I differentiate between a pet and an animal that I eat?
yeah,
And it was a wrestle, it was a tussle. But ultimately I had to honor, and also for me to realize that part of it was, and I'm not saying this is always the case, but for me, part of my choice to be a vegan was sort of a sanctimonious one. At that moment in my life, it was an
sure.
sort of spiritual ego of like, well, I'm better if I don't eat this. Not better
Yeah,
physically, better than you, right?
right.
So that to me is always a red flag, that if your belief is one that is built upon this idea that somehow you are better than, that's just something to be curious about.
Yeah,
What are my motivations for making this choice? And is it because my body wants it, or because my mind has told me that if I don't, dot, dot, dot.
correct. Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, it took me falling down the stairs. Because I started having dizzy spells, and my team kept saying, you need meat. And I'm like, no, 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 no. Meat will lower my vibration, as if falling down the stairs doesn't.
Right.
And so finally, I'm laying there at the bottom of the stairs, and I just hear them, are you done yet? And so I finally, I mean, from there, I actually had to go into iron transfusions. I spent a
Wow.
summer going and getting iron transfusions. That's how
Wow.
bad I was. And so when I had, homeopaths and nutritionists going, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm raising my vibration.
Right, by killing yourself.
I'm killing myself. Right. And I wasn't able to ground everything that was coming in, so that was a huge thing for me, because
Yeah,
man, I fought that so hard.
so did I. And I think
So hard.
we were talking before, and I think this is going to be kind of a common thread about this. I think we're clearing, we're rebooting, we're deleting a lot of programming,
Yeah.
societal programming, the collective programming, the matrix, whatever you want to call it. But also, let's be honest, the spiritual program,
Oh,
the dogma that is
it's
present in our
vicious.
spiritual community, that if you don't wear this, you don't eat this, you don't look
Yeah.
like this, you don't do these things, you don't
Yeah.
change your name to broccoli moonwing or whatever, like, if you don't do all of these things, that somehow you're not spiritual, or you're vibrant.
Right.
That is just as much programming as
It's another religion.
yeah.
I mean, and when we look at that, when we were talking about the body, how many times were we told in the spiritual things, you are not your body, transcend your body? Well, maybe at one point in time that was accurate. Now we are being told, get your butt back in your body
Yeah.
and live it and walk this earth. Walk
Yes.
earth with the higher frequencies that can channel through you, because that's how you make change.
Because this time around, it's ascension without the death. It
Yes.
is the metaphorical death. It's a physical death as well, but it's not leaving the
Yeah.
body. It's the same thing with, kill the ego, destroy the ego. Well, that was the old way. But the new
Right.
way is, no, retrain the ego, reassign the ego, redirect the ego to
Right.
assist you, because you
Right.
need the body this time around. We are not here to escape our human experience. We're here to redefine it. And actually, I think all we're doing is going back to the original template.
I agree.
We're not changing.
We're
Actually,
not
what we're doing
changing
is
anything.
returning.
We're returning there. And I think that gets confused with the whole new earth thing. And I keep hearing from my team, it's not the new earth the way that, people have perceived it. It's the return to the original. It's return. It's return to the way things were before the fall, before the frequency loss, before some of the what we've called viruses in the programming and the human condition. It's the return to that place. And so to me, I can see where the language gets really kind of funky, because people are like, oh, there's this new earth, as if it's this something that you've never experienced before.
Right.
But that's not accurate.
Right. And the
So
reason that we know where we're drawn, that innate sense to go this thing or do that, it's because it's that original blueprint that the body carries.
yes,
Because we also know that DNA passes down information. There's
right.
a fascinating experiment, and I know like epigenetics and all of that is such a pioneering science right now. But there's been research done where they have lab rats who are raised and bred in captivity. So these lab rats have never been in a natural environment, it's always been controlled. And they will have one generation of rats that they will feed two things to, almonds and cherries or whatever. So they feed them the almonds and they feed them the cherries. They enjoy them both and they eat them. Then they start to slowly poison the cherries. So then they get sick when they eat the cherries, so they stop eating them. Then they introduce the offspring of the ones that were trained into the same experiment, but they don't poison either one of them. They still give them the option, and none of the rats will ever eat the cherry.
Right.
Because they have inherited the information that this will kill you, it will poison you, it's not good for you. So we know that DNA carries information. So that's what's happening. It's the unearthing of that
It
original
is.
frequency in that
It is.
template. And the only way to unearth that is to drop all the programming and release that.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so when you look at that, it's like, yes, these things kept us alive, right? They kept us, okay, that snake, I'm gonna stay away from that. Okay, that ledge, I'm not doing that either. And so it was passed down and it kept us alive, but that's not where we are anymore. And now what was the protector is now the cage. So
Mm-hmm.
it has to all go. It has to all go.
Yeah.
And the fastest way for it to go is for us to really start looking at ourselves critically,
Mm-hmm.
truthfully, like in that state of observation, to say, what kind of bull crap am I feeding myself right
Yeah.
now? I mean, and I don't mean food. I
Right.
mean everything, all the sensory inputs. What am I allowing in? What am I digesting?
Right.
And to look at it and go, is any of this true?
Right.
And it's really interesting when you start asking that question. Like I'll read something and I just ask myself, is this true? And my heart's like, you know better than this.
Yeah.
Don't even go there. Because can it be an offshoot reality to where it's true? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you want?
Right.
No. So
And
then
I
why
have
am I
found,
playing with it?
yeah, and my other, like to ask, is this true? And then my other favorite question in that context is, who does it belong to? Where
Yeah,
does this come from? So if
it's
I
a
get
great
a no,
question.
this isn't true. Okay, well, where did this come from? Is this something I adopted in my experience of Andrew? Or is this something I've inherited from generations and generations and generations? Or, as we were talking about the matrix and the controlled environment, the experience of, I call it the experiment of survival mode. Like, how much density can we put a light being in and still have it survive? That was kind of the experiment. Well, now
Yeah.
we know, but
Yeah.
now we
Now we
know
know
this
it's not
much is like,
individuals.
yeah. But when we begin to look at it, that you're born into an environment where the very air has been controlled, essentially. This is the metaphor
Yeah.
I like to use. So when you think about it in those terms, up until recently, the idea of choice from this level of density was so far off.
Yeah.
And I always say, if something doesn't make sense from your human level of perspective, it's because the choice is being made at a higher level of your awareness. So it's the
Right.
creator self, or whatever you call it, that's moving the pieces on the board. But at some point you break through that barrier and you begin to get access to that. And that's what this is. It
Yeah.
is your own signature, your own impulse that is sending this information to you. And it's the things that don't resonate, the things that do need to fall away, the things that do need to die.
Yeah.
And you said it so beautifully several months ago about some things don't need to be integrated, they need to be incinerated. Some
Yeah.
things never were for you,
Right.
but you still
Right.
agreed to hang on to it and say, yeah, sure, I'll have the experience of what it's like to be in this density and this limitation, but we're moving out of survival mode.
Right. We
We're not
absolutely
in that
are. But we were talking just the other day, and it was, I'm not even a football person, but it was the perfect metaphor. And it's like we're going from the player on the football team who's receiving messages from the coach, right, telling us which way to go or which play to do. And we can look at the coach as like, our guides,
Mhm.
we're no longer that player. We're now moving into the coaching position and the playmaker position. And we're actually going to start moving into the one that's the team owner.
Right.
And it's like seeing things from that higher perspective of the team owner. And I think that has brought in a lot of confusion for people because they're used to being the player. They're used to being able to connect into the guides and go, what do I do now? Which is the best way to go? And now, my guides at least are throwing up their hands and going, what do you want to do?
Yeah. Same.
Because they're telling me, they're like, it's all for your growth. It's all a potential. So you can do whatever it is that you want to do. But wow, you can see that if we're holding fear, how that can create what path we go in. If we're holding these, belief systems that are not accurate, that changes which path we go on.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's so important. It's like, can we unlayer? And it's an unlayering, and just let ourselves be who we are in our entirety so that we can then choose which
Totally.
is the right path.
Yeah. And what I love about that awareness and the awakening of that you are the player, you are the coach, you are the cheerleader, you are the spectator, you are the field, you are the stadium. Then when you understand that you're all of it, then you can consciously decide what role you want to play. Today, I just want to be the player. Today, you
Yeah,
know what? I'm not feeling it. I actually don't even want to watch the game. I just want to sleep. So you can do all of that. But I
right.
totally get it. In the beginning, I was so hungry when I first started connecting with my guides. I was just tell me what to do. Just tell me
Mhm.
what to do. And they would. In the beginning, it was very direct. Go do this, build the website,
Very
talk to this
direct.
person, make this thing, start this service. And I remember times when they would tell me to do something where I was like, I can't do that. Are you kidding me? And they're like, well, Andrew, you kind of can't have it both ways. If you want direct instruction,
You kind
you
of need
know,
to listen.
you kind of need to listen. It's like, I want a sign. Well, I don't want that sign, right? I want the
Right.
sign that lets me continue to make poor choices or deny or whatever. But yeah, it is at that point now where and I get it. It reminds me, and I talk about this a lot. It's about those videos on Facebook, that animals that were raised in captivity in, laboratories or whatever, or zoos. And then they're rescued and sent to like the 40,000 acre sanctuary. Many
And
of
they're
them
like,
are like,
oh
what?
my
And they
God.
go back into the cage
Yeah.
because they're used to this confined, controlled environment. And let's face it, from the mind's perspective, if you're in that environment, that's the mind's dream
Right.
because there's no question I'll be fed, I'll be clothed, and when it's time, I'll be killed. So there's no autonomy or agency required because I'm not making any choices.
Right.
Now the cage is open. The key's been in our pocket the whole time. And now we see that. And many of us, and I raise my hand here too, there's a lot of changes that I'm going through where I'm being called back to the path of the initiate as this new work calls me
Yeah.
forward. And I'm like, oh, fuck, this is
I'm
scary.
here again.
Because here I am in the unknown again. But the difference is I'm coming in with everything unlocked and available. So I'm no longer ignorant about what I'm capable of. And
Yeah.
I know better now how to command it than I did even, 6 months ago. So I'm not without resources. But yeah, it's like our guys aren't the CEO anymore. Now we're colleagues and we're collaborators and we're having conversations as equals.
Yeah. That's
So it's
exactly it.
more of a negotiation about, okay, I'll do this, but I also need this support. I can't do this without that. And so
Right.
there is a very real, have you read Natalie Sudman is the author, Sudman, and I can't remember the name of the book. It's going to escape me. I'll put it in the comments here on YouTube. But she was a contractor for the U.S. Army, and she was in Iraq. I may get some of the details incorrect, but I read this book. Oh, the application of impossible things, I think, is the name of the book.
No, I don't think I
Anyway,
have.
she was blown up by a roadside bomb, and she was a very logical, rational, left-brained person. And she suddenly was taken out of her body, and she went before this council, and they were basically like, this is what happened. And she had a very real conversation, and she talks about it in the book. It is fascinating, where she says, I very clearly said to them, all right, I'll go back, but I don't want to be in a protracted physical recovery. I don't want to be physically debilitated. I don't want to have to struggle for money. I mean, she essentially said, I'm not, and the deal was you can go back or you can leave.
Right.
You don't have to go back into your body. And she essentially, when she was shown, and this is the key, what they showed her was how much of an effect her career and her work now writing this book would have on humanity. And that's what made her decide to come back. When she
Mhm.
saw the positive change that she could help enact, that's what made her want to come back. But she said, I will do it under these terms and these conditions. And they
How
agreed.
smart.
Yeah, totally. Because that's the other thing. I think, was it you and I talking about this move from power to authority? I don't
I
see
don't.
it about power anymore. I think it's about authority and agency,
Yeah.
to me, a sovereignty. So it's not about asking for this disembodied self to decide for you anymore. I think it's asserting like, yeah, I'll do this. I think it would be amazing, but I can only do it if these things are present.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's important that we do that, because it is very much, it's almost like the way they've showed to me is like a conference table, and it's now you're at the head. And now you have all these beings and guides and angels, whatever you want to call them, who are willing to assist you. But if you're not willing to tell them what to do, their
And
hands are tied.
if you haven't done the work internally to
Yeah.
reach the point where you can resonate with that truth,
Yeah.
and you are this is the other thing. What I am realizing is, as excited and as passionate as I am about what I want, I must also be willing to hold just as much willingness to let it go and release that. It's got to be both. It's not putting my hands on my hips and saying, if I don't do this, if you guys don't do this for me, I'm not going
Yeah.
to work. It's saying from a place of truth and authenticity, and knowing what that really feels like when you're tapped into the soul's agenda as opposed to the mind's agenda. That is when the things happen.
Yeah.
But you also know that you got to be willing to do the work to get there.
Yeah.
It's not going to be handed to you.
No. No, it's not going to be handed to you. And actually it feels like every time you exert yourself, every time you're like, yes, this is what I want, and I'm willing to do the work for this, in comes, or should I say out comes, whether it's an insecurity or a fear, and it bubbles up, and it's there to say, this is what's stopping you.
Yep.
This isn't to tell you you're on the wrong path. This is showing you still have this program running inside, and it will stop you. It will make it so that self-sabotage, or you're not manifesting the way that you should be from that pure heart space, because you're in your little room closing all the windows.
Right.
And not allowing the energy in. So that's why it bubbles up. But I think a lot of people misread that bubble up, and they go, well, that must mean I'm not supposed to do it.
Or that I'm a shitty manifester. Like, there were
Yeah.
lessons coming in around money and this idea several years ago a lot. And one of the key ones was human manifestation so often is inspired by the not having of it. So if it's the fear and panic and anxiety of not having that is the fuel you're putting in your tank, you're not coming from a clear place.
No.
And that, they would say this all the time. And I remember when these teachings came in and I was like, what the hell? I mean, I was like flipping them off. Like, that's, because they would say, Andrew, you want $1 million, you can have it. It is right there. But the journey to the $1 million, you have to go through all the obstacles, your work. Because if I was raised in a household where money is the root of all evil and rich people are powerful, are evil assholes, and it only leads to suffering and misery, I may want money with every part of my body, but if that belief is still running, that's what stands in my way. And that's my job to clear.
Exactly.
So it's not that you can't have it, or that you're a bad manifestor, you don't deserve it, or that God hates you.
Right.
It's just that you are carrying some very real things that stand in the way of it, and it's your responsibility to clear it.
Yeah.
And the beauty of it is once you clear it, then you get to remember the power. You get to remember your abilities. And we were talking about this the other day. Man, I'm glad instant manifestation was not a thing when I was, 18, 19 years
I would have
old.
blown the world up.
It would be a really fucking scary place if every wish I had ever had could come true like that, because I wasn't wishing from a pure place.
Right.
I was wishing from revenge or anger or scarcity or fear or whatever.
Right.
So,
I know.
it's not that you can't have it. You already are what you want, but your belief that you are not is the divide.
Right. Well, and it's interesting because anything that you can imagine, anything you can think of, it's already created. It's already there. So it really is kind of like aligning yourself and getting all of your bullshit out of the way that stands between you and really what it is that you're wanting. And the truth of the matter is once all the bullshit's out of the way, that may not be what you want anymore.
Nope.
And you have to be able to let that go. You have to be able to say, yeah, I just changed completely. It's like my husband jokes that he's been married 8 times, all to me.
It reminds me of my year in LA last year. And the way that I would sum that up is I got exactly what I asked for, and it was not at all what I wanted. It really was. I got it. I got the LA dream and I was like, oh, I don't want this.
Right. But what an experience. And so sometimes we have to figure out what we don't want, and it just changes everything and then it ripples through and we have to allow that.
Mhm.
But we have this belief that everything has to be perfect or that, but if we can just switch it and go, and if I can move through every experience, and not everything is going to be absolutely perfect, but I can work through it and go, okay, thank you. Thank you for showing me that.
Yeah,
Now I know what I don't want and
exactly.
move in another direction.
And we learn to feel that sense of when something isn't correct. And, what I have found is the clearer I get, the smaller the little incongruencies are. In the beginning, it's really easy to feel this.
Yeah.
I'm in a shitty relationship, or I have really bad habits, or I'm making really poor decisions. That's really easy to feel, right? When
Yeah.
the body's broken, or I'm in a dangerous relationship, or whatever, that's easy to sense. But once you get rid of the big layers, you get down to these tiny little, minute little, it's at the quantum level. A hair's
Yeah.
breadth, the left or the right changes everything.
Yeah.
So it does become a self mastery, living that mastery, because you do start to see, oh, it was that tiny little sliver of that old idea that I still hadn't quite let go of, was the thing that made it kind of wonky. And that's the joy of it. You go, oh, well, then I'll just recreate.
Right.
Now that I know, I can just recreate.
Which actually kind of brings me to one of the things that we were talking about. I love to get information in the bathtub. Water conducts electricity. A lot of the information that comes in, we're all kind of electric anyway.
Yeah.
And so I do a lot of journeying and a lot of work in the bathtub. And I was working with Jesus actually, and I had voice texted myself all the information. So I am going to read it to you. But we were talking about kind of long.
Sorry, you just cut out, and I want to make sure that people hear that whole thing.
Okay.
So can you
I
go
will
back?
start completely over.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think, is it my internet or is it yours or?
It might be, I mean, I'm in the rural internet zone, so if more than 2 people in the neighborhood are online, it's going to be choppy.
And it's Mercury retrograde.
Yes.
So, okay, so I will start over. It says, one must be in love with their creation or actively working to change it. All else is madness. Unhappiness is a tool that can guide the direction, not a location in which to live. Many people have accepted the state of unhappiness as part of the condition of their incarnation, and nothing can be further from the truth. See it as a tool and allow it to guide you to what makes you happy. And so I'm listening to this, and immediately my mind starts going, yeah, but what about when you're anxious? And he looks at me and goes, does it make you happy? And I'm like, no. And he goes, then you need to go, why am I anxious? And if you're anxious here, turn away and go here. And so it was really interesting as I started looking at the how much human suffering is programmed into us. And I don't know if any of you all have been in chronic pain, but when you're in chronic pain, it's like your threshold is right here. You stub your toe, the world just wants to end. I mean, it just puts you over. But if you're not in chronic pain and you stub your toe, you're like, "Ow, that really freaking hurt," and you just move forward. And I think unhappiness is the same. If your unhappiness is right here, you can't handle anything. You
No.
can't handle a flat tire or, a miscommunication or any of these things that happen in our lives. This is a reality where things are going to happen. It's all based on how are we going to work at it.
Yeah.
But so then it's like, well, everything makes me unhappy. And it's accurate because you're here.
I think it's the same thing. And from my experience, the PTSD that I suffered from, growing up the way that I did, my anxiety was always here. And when it
Yeah.
really started to reach its peak, it was 2005-ish. And I was living in New York at the time. Oh, you're frozen. Are you there?
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Okay, good. I was living in New York at the time, and my anxiety was at its like threshold. And things like the sound of my neighbor putting the key in the door, it would send me into a panic. I would get
Yeah.
going to the mailbox would send me into a panic because what bad news is going to be here today? Emails coming in from an address I didn't know would send me into a panic because what bet, so it was always waiting for that other shoe to drop, waiting for the boogeyman to jump out of the bushes. Oh, we're frozen again.
You're frozen. I can hear you.
Okay.
Somebody in your neighborhood.
Someone can hear me somewhere. But it's, and Seth talks about this in the Seth Speaks, that, when you're living through the lens of the mind. Okay, so here we are back. Minor technical difficulty. Mercury's making Gatorade.
Yep.
Yeah, so what I was saying, and I just as an aside, this is my lesson and my medicine is every time technical difficulties I have the least amount of patience for. If the internet was a person, I would punch it in the face repeatedly. I have so little patience. Every Virgo element of me just comes screaming to the forefront when things like this happen.
No, and and thank God I'm not a Virgo, because it would be really bad. Because I had to let go of so much perfectionism because of internet stuff. I'd be doing a group meditation and something would go out, or there'd be some background noise, or oh my gosh, in one of the last groups I did, the house was empty. There was no one here, but people were like, there was a TV going in the background. No. No, there wasn't.
I don't
anything.
watch TV while I'm leading group meditation.
Right,
So anyway, what we're talking about is, this idea, and, Seth, in the Seth Speaks book by Jane Roberts, he talks about this, when we're talking about your anxiety, your fear being, he says, the fears, it's not that they're not real, but to the mind, that's the only thing that's real.
Yeah.
And when you're living through the lens of the mind, the fears are lived and true in the sense that the boogeyman's always waiting around the corner. The other shoe is always about to drop. The bottom's always about to fall out somewhere. And it brings me back to that point where you were saying, Jesus's beautiful message about how we've been programmed to accept a certain amount of suffering. And it's an Eckhart Tolle quote, suffering's only necessary until you realize that it's not. But think about it, right? No pain, no gain. You got to hustle, you got to grind. If you're not working 8 hours a week, it's because you don't want it bad enough. Even the theory of evolution that we have been sold is that the most savage, most aggressive, most cunning, most beastly, they're the only ones that are going to survive.
Right.
So we've been raised to believe that, Catholic, don't get too happy and proud because God's going to see you and bring you some, some danger or some trouble. So of course it makes sense that and even I, we were talking about this the other day, as I'm making these changes to my practice, suddenly the way that I receive income is changing. To the mind, that's a panic, even though I'm doing fine financially. Right. And if I'm like, well, I want to buy a new pair of shoes, I have plenty of money right now. I can afford a new pair of shoes. This is not an indulgent. The mind's like,
listen, buddy.
No, my God, Andrew, are you kidding me? You're never going to have another client again.
You're going to starve to death.
Right. I hope you enjoy being homeless with your new shoes. I mean, that's essentially, the message. And it's just my decision. One of the main reasons that I finally surrendered and said yes in 2012, and my big peak awakening experience was my way just isn't fucking cutting it, because it was a Groundhog Day. I was experiencing the same thing over and over and over. It was the same suffering in a different city, the same shitty relationship with a different guy. But it was always the same.
Yeah.
And so to finally realize that, man, there has got to be a better way, because I did not come here just to be miserable, go to work and die. That cannot be it.
No, we did not.
No. But I think that programming is so hard to undo, because it's so hard everywhere.
And it's like you sit with what Jesus said and you can see how triggering it is. It's like, well, I've got a family to feed. What do you want me to do? Quit my job? It's like you can hear how the mind would go on. Because I talked to a couple of people about what he had said, and wow, the reactions are just a complete and utter triggering. Complete and utter triggering. And I think it's really important to focus on the fact that he said, if you're not happy with your creation, you need to be working towards changing it. And I think people think change is like boom, and it's not always. I mean, it can be, but when we're talking about this deep, deep programming, it takes a bit. So, I would say to people, like, what are you doing every day to make yourself a little bit happier?
Yeah.
And also to really challenge, what is your definition of happiness?
Totally. And to, we talked about this the other day, and I think that this is one of the razor's edges that we walk doing this work. is that, do I believe that it's all a game? Yeah. Do I
I do
believe that
too.
it's all an illusion? Yes. Do I believe that I chose every single thing that has happened to me in my life, period? Yes.
Yeah.
And when I was in the depths of my misery and my suffering and the trauma was all I could see, if someone had come to me and said, "Oh, Andrew, honey, it's all a
I'd
game,"
kind of kick them.
I would have been like, "Give me a fucking sharp object because I'm going to stab you in the throat." Because that's not how you meet people, right?
No,
If
no.
someone's unhappy and in the depths of misery and afraid and in horrible relationships and has very real financial troubles and physical troubles or whatever they are, no, I'm not going to say, "Well, honey, it's a game. Just get up and have." No, it's
No.
meeting yourself with love and compassion.
Yeah.
Just like a kid who comes to you and screaming and crying about the monster under the bed, that there's not, I mean, there might be a monster under
There
the bed,
might
but
be, I'm telling you.
yeah, but that where their fear is coming from is perhaps not necessarily rational, but
Yeah.
you're not going to meet them there. You're going to be like, "Oh, honey,
No.
come here. Tell me what's wrong. Tell me your
Right.
story. Let me comfort you." And that's how we have to meet ourselves. So when
Absolutely.
we do deliver messages like the beautiful one that Jesus gave you, and we do read, the Eckhart Tolle quote, "It's only necessary until it's not," the part of you that is reactive to that, the part of you that gets angry and furious and scared at that, that's the part of you that wants the comfort to
Yeah.
know that, yeah, it's going to be okay. It might not feel like it is right now, but it will
Right.
be okay.
But it will be. It will be okay. And what okay is may not be what our brain says it looks like.
And it won't be someone else's version. Your idea of
No.
paradise might be my
Right.
fucking nightmare.
Right.
So it's exactly back to that quote. If it does, and this is what I say, only you know what truth feels like. So if
Yeah.
it doesn't feel true for you, be curious about that.
Get rid of it.
Be
Like,
curious about, why do I keep showing up doing these things that make me feel so horrible? And that
yeah.
leads me to my programming, where my grandmother told me, and this is not me literally, but as an example, my grandmother told me, don't get into a relationship. Love is for suckers. It's only going to hurt you. Well, am I
Right.
walking around then with this belief that all men are dogs and they're all going to hurt me? And then I'm surprised why
And
I
then you're
can't,
surprised when it happens.
yeah, or why I
Right.
can't find a happy relationship. So it's the things that challenge us and trigger us that show us where we still have some love to give and some investigating to do. The internet thing is a perfect example. My inner control freak goes ape shit when I can't have it exactly how I want all the time. Well, that's my opportunity to go, "Honey, it's okay. No one's going
Yeah.
to care that there was a little glitch and an interruption. You can
Right.
edit it and it's fine. It's real and
And
it's
all
human."
is well. Right.
Yeah.
Well, and we talked about like, I've been married happily for almost 26 years. It'll be 26 this July. And I had realized that there was still a part of me that was constantly going, when is this going to end?
Mm.
Waiting for that other shoe to drop, because how did I get so lucky? Why am I deserving of that? You know what I mean? Like, and you look around and you see how many people are miserable in relationships, and you start going, well, I'm just waiting for it to happen to me. And that waiting then makes it so you're actually not as engaged in the relationship as you need to be, because you've always got one foot out the door.
Right. And that starts to breed suspicion and mistrust. And like, are
Right.
you really saying what you, and I think the opposite of that is true. I see this all the time with, people who are, let's say early 20s, especially when I was doing, more like love readings and more traditional kind of readings. Well, tell me, I want to be in a relationship. Okay, well, what does that look like to you? What does that mean for you? I don't know. I just want to be in a relationship. Well, how the hell are you going to recognize it if you haven't even been able to
If you
name it?
don't
That's
even know
like
what it looks
sending
like.
you shopping for chocolate cake when you have no idea what it is. So it's that same thing, like the programming that we have been sold. I blame Julia Roberts in Hollywood, that it's just going to solve everything and it'll be magical and it doesn't matter. You don't have to be intentional about it or
Yeah.
have an idea. It's just going to smack you in the face at your best friend's wedding. Well, that might happen, but if you haven't defined for yourself what safety is, if you haven't
Yeah.
defined for yourself what comfort and collaboration and trust feel like, if you haven't defined for yourself internally what feels good for you and what you need to thrive, then you're never going to have a clear idea when it
Right.
does show up of what,
Exactly.
and you're still going to be looking for it based on some sort of external thing that you've been sold.
Well, that, and when I had to look at the fact that I was, waiting for the other shoe to drop, it brought me back to really back to the spiritual conditioning of, if you want to pursue your spiritual growth, your soul, you need to leave your family.
Yeah.
You need to go to a nunnery or a monastery, or, go live in a cave somewhere. And again, it's kind of the whole thing about the body. We're doing it different this time.
Right.
And now we're being asked, can we really live in this world? And that means relationships. It means that you can have the spiritual knowledge and the understanding and still, have a relationship or not,
Right. It's up to
because
you.
it's your choice.
Yeah. And the temple, back in the day, the density was such that it wasn't really, you did have to go to the top of the mountain to discover this stuff because it wasn't readily available. It was
Yeah.
secretly hidden. It was purposely hidden or protected.
Yeah.
But that temple is within. And the temple on the mountain was only an avatar for the space that you were entering within. It was just a way to show the mind and the body and the spirit, you're entering this sacred place. And so from now on, everything will change. But now I go in the temple within, sitting here on the bus, on the subway, walking down the street. It's always available now because the veils have opened to allow us that direct connection.
Absolutely, they have.
Yeah. So I don't
I
need
think I
the
think it's
guru
like the
anymore.
veils are not, they're not what they were. It's the so the let's just say the external veils of the experiment are not what they were. So now it's up to us to collapse the ones that are still within.
Yes. Because that's
That's
the key.
that's the
We
key.
perpetuate the experiment internally. We
Right.
perpetuate the environment that we were born into when we don't question it.
Yeah.
And so if I'm carrying around the belief that all men are dogs and money's the root of all evil, and I'm wondering why I'm single and broke,
Right.
while the other part of me is dying for money in a man,
Like,
right?
what
Like
is
that's all I
wrong?
want is 50
Right.
bucks in a date, right? Like why can't I get that? So, it's all in there. It all makes sense, and I see primarily my work is to either validate what somebody already knows, to give them permission to do something they already want to do or have already done, and they just want, a source to say, yeah, it's fine, you made the right choice, or to just show them possibilities that they hadn't considered. But I'm not showing you anything that isn't already there. I'm just the
Yeah.
mirror to reflect. It's a boomerang. It comes from you up to your source, goes to mine, down through me, and returns back to you. That's all I'm doing.
Yeah.
And maybe I can see it from a perspective that you can't because it's not my issue, so I'm not this close to it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I had posted recently on my dad had come in through a dream for me to give a message to one of my family members. And my dad was the type, I mean, his favorite saying was like, get up, make hay when the sun shines. He was work, 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 work. Well, he kind of died right after he turned 52. So I'm not so
Mhm.
like not great advice. But you can see how like I can see where it ingrained in me, like you never know when the rain's coming. You never know. You're not going to have enough money. And then you should have saved and should have done this and should have done that. So I'm sure I had subconsciously those beliefs as well. But when he came to me and he said, that was what I always said. He said, but I had it backwards. He said, because if I looked at it as the sun is love and joy and, it's everything. The sun is like everything that we're really wanting and striving for as far as connection. And the hay is the abundance. If you pay attention to the sun, if you pay attention to what makes you happy, what makes your soul sing, what opens your heart space, that hay is going to grow.
Mhm.
It's going to grow and it'll be easier for you to tend. You know what I mean? And so he was saying to me, he's like, I really had it backwards.
Yeah.
I really
Well,
had it backwards.
and I think it goes back to our point of when you are connected to your source, then you are tuned into the choices that are right for you. So
Yeah.
while out of 100 people, 99 might be walking in that direction, but your source says, no, actually it's over here. But you go, but wait, everyone else is over here. And say, well, you can do whatever you want. But I'm telling you that your path is leading you here. And the thing that you seek is in this direction.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with money, right? People say traditionally this time of year or whatever time of year, my client, I remember when I first started, I had several mentors tell me like, Andrew, save your money because come October when the holiday season starts, everybody just stops
Hmm.
booking. I had the opposite experience. My first big year was 2016, was the first year that I could actually fully support myself with this work. I made most of my money in the fourth quarter. Almost all of my money was made from August to the end of the year. And that was only because I was listening to what my own guidance was telling me in
Right.
spite of the traditional wisdom that I had been given. So it's that same thing, and that's what I believe. Like the voice that directs you is never judgy, shamey, wagging its finger at you. Even in times of panic and crisis, it's Andrew, get up from the desk, walk to the elevator, go downstairs and cross the street because the building's going to explode.
Right.
It's never, oh my God, Andrew, get the fuck out of here right now. You're going to die. It's never this panicky, freaky thing. So you just trust that voice, the sun, right? You trust your own sun. You connect to that source of light, and exactly it. You have to, and that I think is, for me, was the biggest sacrifice, was my own skepticism and my own fear and my own doubt. I had to be willing to sacrifice that.
Yeah.
Because that was the thing that was standing in the way of my own connection and trusting that. And it wasn't that I didn't
Absolutely.
have the gifts or the voices. I look back now and I see it was with me from day one.
Yeah.
It's just that I was so deeply in my own pain and programming that I didn't hear it. And when I did hear it, I didn't believe it. I thought it was some weird momentary woo-woo thing. And, I didn't really understand it, but I certainly didn't live my life according to it.
Right. Right.
But the minute that I said, okay, fine, I surrender, that's when I just pivoted and it just started to unfold.
Yep. And, they've explained it to me before. They're like, talking to you guys, like, us here in this experiment is like, they're on a boat on top of the water, and there's this tube that's connected to us, and we're at the bottom. And they're trying to, if you've ever tried to talk to somebody underwater, you're like, you can barely hear anything. But us unlayering makes it so we're actually getting closer and closer to the surface, and we can hear better and we receive better. And so it makes a whole lot of sense. When you look at it that way, they're like, look, we're trying to talk to you all, and you all are underwater.
I love that. The analogy that I was always given in the beginning was, when you're born, you're in the center of the village, and that's where the bonfire is. And that's the source of light. That's where everyone meets. That's where you get everything you need. Yeah. And as you grow, you slowly but surely move away from the bonfire, step by step, choice by choice. You remove yourself from yourself.
Absolutely.
And then at some point you go, wait a minute. And you turn around and you see that the bonfire is 1,000,000 miles away, but you can still see the glow. And they said, that's where we are. We're still around the fire and we're calling out to you. It's just that we are so far from you now.
You can't hear us.
You can't hear us, but you can always see the light. You can always feel it. And when you just continue to make choices that move you towards yourself, and you decide and consciously choose, I don't know how, I don't know when, but I'm just not going to choose against myself whenever I can remember to, right? You just do the best. Eventually you go, oh yeah, I'm back at the fire. Now I can hear him again. Now I can see it. Now I can smell it. Now I can, sense it. But yeah, I think we're born there. This is what I believe. I don't think anyone can ever change my mind. When I say that, something's going to come in to change my mind. But I believe with all my heart that up until about the age 5, we're the purest version of ourselves that we're going to be. And
I actually really agree.
With your amazing grandbabies.
Yeah.
I know that a generation from now, the idea of coming to someone like me for healing or insight is going to be really quaint, kind of like the covered wagon. Because we're born with that ability. We were just born into an environment that was designed to separate us from that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And those veils have fallen. So now these kids are coming in fully tuned in, fully turned on, fully aware of who they are.
Well, speaking of this, the one grandchild, she started communicating with me when she was still in the womb. And she would come in and she actually helped me with stuff, right? And it was weird because it was like I was connecting with her highest aspect, but there's no differentiation. That's what's so bizarre. So it's not like I'm talking to an infant. I'm talking to the whole spirit that she is. And it's been this really neat journey. And then she was born and she was born in Turkey. So I had to go fly out there to meet her. And I take a look at her, and as soon as I get near her, she telepaths me. She's like, oh my God, this is so limiting. And I'm like, what? And she's like, I was told how limiting it would be to be in the body, but I didn't know it would be like this. And I'm sure, like the whole newborn thing of like, I can't lift my head.
Right. I can't even control my bowels or my bladder.
I can't do anything.
Yeah.
And so she was so frustrated. I'm like, you need patience. And so then it was like a couple of days later, I had her propped up on the pillows and she's doing these crunches, right? And she's grunting and screaming through them. I'm like, kid, you need to chill. Oh my God. Now.
Right. You're like a day old.
Right.
Relax.
Like, I kid you not, I think she was 10 days old at that time because I met her at 7 days. And, and she said, no, you don't understand. She said, I have to take control of this form. I have to program it before it's programmed for me. And I just looked at her like, what? What do you mean? And so she really was explaining like how even me programming her, I'm like, oh, you're probably going to be, athletic, or you'll have blue eyes, or you'll have this. That's programming.
Yeah.
But then she also brought in the passive programming, which just blew me away. And, it's like, how like when you think about empaths and how they can get into a room and they can pick up other people's emotions, and unless they're understanding that's what's happening, they can claim them as their own.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to tell you what, programming is no different. So if you're in a room full of people who are, life is hard, life stinks, you'll never get rich, or if you do, you're evil,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not in control, complete in control of your form and everything that goes into it on the quantum level, you just took in their stuff.
Yeah. Totally.
And that to me was
That's huge.
mind blowing, because I mean, like Chiron, I listened to his messages. I like him. He's always talked about control the innate, command center. I got it. I understood that. Never in a million years did I think I could just go to the store and pick up someone's freaking programming.
Yeah.
If I wasn't in complete control of my form. And I think that's where we are right now. I think
Totally.
everything is saying, get control of your form. Take control of your emotions, take control of your physicality, and really command and listen to this body. It's almost like, can you have a relationship with it? And Rowan, my grandbaby, she was very clear on this. The body is a machine, and it is a glorious, incredible machine.
Yeah.
But you have a relationship with it, and you integrate with it, and you work with it. And it's shifted a lot in me since then. And I guess that was, a month ago. And now it's so funny because my daughter will send me Rowan's workout videos where she does her crunches, she's 6 weeks old now. Her head's already, she can lift her head. She sits up some, I mean, and then you put her on the floor and she gets her knees up under her like she's trying to crawl. It's like, whoa. But she's doing it. It's nuts. It's nuts. And when I had said to her, I'm like, well, most babies start to roll over about 4 months. She's like, that's programming. I'm like, whoa, you're right. Okay.
Well, and it's true, because we look at, there are a million examples, and I'm sure everyone or most people watching this have heard of this, right? Like the kid that graduates college at 12 with a PhD, or the kid who's a virtuoso violinist by the age of 5 or whatever. So there are examples everywhere of what is potential. And we have called those an exception. We have created a reality where we go, oh, well, that's like 1 in a billion, but it's not.
It's not.
That's
it's not. And that's the kicker.
All capable of.
Right. That's the kicker. So it's not, I don't want people to think that, my grandbaby's this incredible, who knows what she's going to do with herself, but, like that she's this rarity. These kids, and I say kids because this is what's happening now, are coming in. They're not coming in through the veil, and they are embodied, and they are here to show us the pure potential of physicality, of mastery within. And then at the same time, it's like Rowan had said to me, she said, and she was really kind of talking about this grouping that's coming in. She said, we're the wind, and we can be a breeze, or we could be a hurricane. And maybe we need a hurricane because we have to be shown like what's not working, because we as humans, man, we get lost. We get lost in the everyday, we get lost in the grind, and we need these disruptors to come in and be like, wake the hell up.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what they are.
We begin, and I know for myself, when I started my journey of consciously creating and deliberately living, and you start to find your people, and I found myself losing myself even in that, right? Like it was still an external source that I was relying, albeit it was an environment that felt kinder and gentler. And I really do believe that, the majority of the people in the spiritual community want to be the people. We want to be the people we say we are. We really are aspiring to be greater than we have been. but there's still a lot of stuff, you know, if in the end, if whatever is coming from outside of you does not resonate with what's within you, that is the thing to pay attention to. Because I know for
Yeah.
myself, oftentimes I would say yes to things, or I would absorb things or agree to things that I knew weren't good for me, that I knew was like, I don't know if
Yeah.
this is really for me. And I would, you know, of course, end up getting bit in the butt. And it reminds me of one of my early mentors, who I didn't even know was a mentor until years later. He said, Andrew, who was a numerologist, I love him, John Ashbrook is his name. He said, Andrew, if you get a gut instinct and you don't trust it, somebody's going to get hurt, and it's probably going to be you. And of course, he was
Yeah.
talking,
That's exactly
yeah,
it.
he was not just talking about physical harm, but emotional harm, you know, energetic harm, or letting some sort of program into your field that takes you, you know, forever to unravel. But you just got it. This is, I think, we're at this crossroads where the difference in the experience is the willingness to do the work, the willingness to be present no matter what it is, find a way to embrace it all with love. We just have to decide at this point that what's in here
Yeah.
has got to come to the top of the list. It just has to.
Yeah.
It just has to.
Yeah.
Because
Yep.
what's the alternative?
I don't like the alternative personally.
No. And it's just continuing to perpetuate the same wounding,
Yeah.
the same patterns, the same whatever, the same mindlessness and out of bodiness. And that's the problem, because the other side of it is the magic show is happening in here, right? This is where the magic show is happening. And if you are present for
Yeah.
it, man, it is literally a magic show. The things that I'm experiencing daily, I was like, where the hell did that come from? And they're like, it was in there. It was in there, Andrew. You just unlocked it. That's all. You just finally
Right.
found the lens that let, you know, it's like the eye doctor, better, worse, better, worse. And you finally go better, better. And you finally find it. And then it gets clearer and clearer. But it's not happening out here. It's
No,
the
it's
magic
not.
shows inside. It only is. So I
Yeah.
think for me, that's the message. I guess it's clearer is it's always in here. And the stuff that's happening out here is only there to show us where we can still go within here, right? It's the
Yeah.
chaos and the craziness that's happening on the planet. It's not, it's evidence that things are falling apart. And the only thing that's falling apart is things that have to. You know, one of the lessons that has been the hardest for me to embody, and this is one of the first ones that my guide, somebody said, Andrew, if something can be taken from you, let it be. Because if something can be taken from you, it will be. And the only things that will ever be taken from you are the things you don't need or that never belong to you,
Right.
or that were never true. So the only thing we're seeing collapsing is the stuff that was not built on truth.
Absolutely. And that includes the stuff inside.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's not easy and it's brutal.
And it's
You
scary.
know, it
All
is
of the
scary.
things are very real, but the source of that comfort and guidance is also there with you,
Mhm.
right? So
It
that
is.
even though the insanity is present, the balm and the medicine for that insanity is also present.
Well, yeah. It's very much, I mean, everything is a micro and macro. And I mean, even like if you what brought to mind was stinging nettle actually. So if you like the stinging nettle plant, right near it is the plant that is there. You can wipe on where you got stung and it's better. And that has been a really great example in my life because I'm like, okay, so if there's something bad, whatever it is that's going to help fix it is literally right there, whether it's opening the heart or whatever, however it looks, it's always right there. You're never given the catastrophe without the cure.
Yep.
So you're never really left completely, on your own devices. We really are surrounded. We really do have a team. And
Yeah.
and
It's a
just because you
crossword.
and I can connect to them doesn't mean they don't exist for everybody.
Right. And it happens in the own way. You know, it won't happen for someone else the way that it happened for me, the way that it happened for you.
Right.
You know, what you
Absolutely.
sense is not the way that I sense. And so, you know, my team always said in the beginning was, Andrew, the problem only exists to lead you to the solution. It's like the crossword puzzle. The Sunday New
Right.
York Times crossword puzzle in pen is like the ultimate, you know, level of genius achievement if you can really do it. But you may look at that crossword and go, oh my God, I don't know what any of these words are. Who the hell knows a 75-letter word for, or whatever. Well, but the truth is that the answer is guaranteed. It already exists. That's the only reason the problem could be created in the first place. Without the answer, there would be no problem.
Right.
So it's always
funny.
Twisted. It's always wrapped up together. It's that DNA spiral. There's another, example of this microcosm is it's always there.
It's always there. You just have to, what I'm actually hearing, I was going to say something else, and what came right through was you have to be open to it. Because sometimes what the solution is not what your pretty little mind said it was going to be.
No. And sometimes what you think you want, you don't really want.
You really don't want. You're like, oh, that's
really
not for me. No.
Yeah. But you just have to be willing. I mean, if I could leave people listening with anything, all you have to do is be willing. And all you have to do is be curious. That's it. You don't have to fake love and light. You don't have to fake smile. You don't have to.
And please don't do any of that, actually.
No, don't just, Spirit doesn't care if you show up enraged and furious. If you are honestly and authentically enraged and furious, Spirit will love it. It's like, yes, bring it on. Come on, show me who you really are.
Be real.
Yeah, but you have to be willing.
And
willingness doesn't mean
it's scary to be real.
Yeah, you show up, okay, Spirit, I don't know what the fuck's going on. I don't know how it's going to solve itself, but I'm here. Right. I'm curious about why my life sucks. Would you please, help me shed a little light here? That's the beginning. Yeah. There's got to be another way. There always is. There's always a way.
When I have clients who come to me and they're like, I'm so sick of everything. I'm like, oh, good. Now, are you sick of your shit too? Mm-hmm. Because the minute you're sick of everything and you're sick of yourself and you're looping and you can see it, it's like, man, you're ready for big changes, and it's exciting. They're not so excited. I'm excited from this side of the aisle. I'm like, yes, we're here. Because it is the really, really important spot. You have to be done with yourself. Yeah. And that comes in layers.
Totally.
There's parts of me that I've been done with for years. Yep. And then new one will pop up and I'm like, I'm done with you too.
Yeah, and sometimes they cycle back around and you go, nope, no, I know you, little one. Stay over there on your side of the fence. We're not doing that again.
No, we're not playing this freaking game anymore. I'm done.
Yeah. So it's not always, this is the other thing we talk about, right? Like mastery is not easy. Simple is not easy.
No, it's not. It's not. It is simple, meaning if you can just figure it out how it works for your life, you'll find that it's simple. It's putting it into practice in the everyday is where it really kicks your ass. And that's when it gets like, oh, how am I going to do this? And that's when all the fears come up. And what about this? And what about that? And the mind just it just has a field day. And sometimes I do find I'll just let the mind have its field day. Let's just sit here and let me observe the field day, right? And just get it all out. And then I'm like, okay, now let's go here.
I do a writing exercise with my clients, and it's exactly that. It's I call it "What's the worst that can happen?" And when someone,
one of my favorites,
when someone has chronic fear and anxiety, and they're always running the loop in their head, I say, give yourself, and this is the key: you control it. So you set a timer on your phone for 15 minutes, and you sit down and you open up the door to those fears. You invite them to speak their piece. And you push play on that timer, and what's the worst that can happen? And you let them speak. Oh my God, I'm going to die. I'm going to be homeless. This is and you just let it out, let it out, let it out. Then when the timer goes off, you say, thank you. Appreciate your time. And you get up and you walk away. Then throughout the day, when the anxieties or if the anxieties come back, you say, no, honey, you had your 15 minutes today. We can do this again tonight. But for now, we're not doing that. So it gives you back the agency in your life.
The control.
And I'm not avoiding my fear. I'm giving them.
Right. Right.
And I see this every single time with enough consistency with a practice like this. You begin to see, even after like 5 to 7 days, you begin to see repetitive patterns. You begin to see the same old fears in a different, and it all comes down to one fear. Eventually you get to sort of the root of what your thing is. And you see that all of those were just versions of that, wearing a different mask. And it begins to give you that agency and that authority back in your life to go, oh, I see, you weren't out to get me. You were just, it's like, giving a kid the keys to the candy store and wondering why you have a spastic hyper 5-year-old. Well, because you just You gave them unlimited sugar. Of course they're going to be,
Right. Like, duh.
Yeah, of course, duh. But you also know that let it run its course, give them a bunch of water, they're going to crash and take a nap in a minute, and it's going to be fine.
Right. Well, and what's interesting about the fear exercise, because man, I it's one I've utilized again, whenever the fears that come up, particularly like as we were talking about, we're both in this transition. We've got new things coming in that are just like, whoa, how do we handle this? How do we create it? How do we be this vessel? So that is like those shifts, the mind's like, yes, and starts up again. I personally have to do the worst case scenario, but man, I have to take it out to the furthest extent, which most of the time the furthest extent for me is that I die. And so
mine is that I end up homeless.
Right. Well, see, but then you're homeless on the streets, you don't have healthcare, you're not warm, you're going to die.
Yeah.
Right. And so, so mine is always death. And I'm like, it's fine.
Yeah. And to me, I'm like, well, fuck, man, if I go and get hit by a bus today, game over. I don't have anything to worry about.
Right. Fine. It's okay.
Yeah. And now I get to come back and haunt some people and,
But I had to do that. I had to barrel it down to like the absolute end and all the steps and be like, you know what? That's actually, it's almost like taking the fuse out of it. It's like, because we try to push fear away. And when you push it away, you're not really looking at it, because if you really look at it, you're like, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
It's going to be
like
okay.
A kid who's throwing a tantrum because all they want is attention. The fear has to get bigger and louder and put on scarier masks, and eventually it externalizes itself and begins to show up as other people or other events. But just like a kid, mom, what? Nothing. I just wanted for 2 seconds for you to see me and only me. It's the same thing with the fear. When you finally go, what? Okay, tell me your story. What's going on? You go, oh, that's it?
Okay, right, and you're like, we're okay.
Right.
We're okay. Isn't that funny? Like all mine barreled down to, yeah, you died.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, cool.
That's fine. And then what skin suit can I be in?
Right, exactly. Then what's next?
So it's like all of a sudden my fear is like, wait a minute, you're supposed to be scared of that. Like, no, you kidding me?
Not really, actually.
What's next? We're going to have some fun.
Totally.
Can I have blue skin, please?
Totally. And it's, what I also realize, I think it's the fear of death, and I think it's also the fear of getting what we want. I think oftentimes scariest thing in life is getting what you truly want, what is your soul's and heart's desire, because the mind can't comprehend how it's going to manifest or actualize. The mind has no real way of understanding how to even go about beginning that. And for myself, once I really started seeing that I actually can create what I want and I can't, I had to hand in my victim card. Yeah. No more could it be someone else's fault or because of this or because of that or because of you. Now, certainly those things play a role, right? But in the end, it's only ever been me. All of it is for me and all of it is from me.
Well, you know what I struggled with, particularly like we were talking about the contracts, and being in the contract negotiation, there's things that I have in my head that I'm like, okay, you know what? I do. I would like this. But then it's like, well, what's that going to do to my relationship? What's that going to do I still have an 11-year-old. What is it? I really had to get to the point where I'm like, I had to trust that if it was going to create in my life, how could it be horrible for those that I love? Mm. Particularly if they're still in alignment with where I am. You know what I mean? So it's like, I really had to go, it's going to work out, because if I'm meant to stay in a relationship, it's going to work through whatever changes are coming. And, and it's so funny because I'll verbalize this to my husband. He's like, are you kidding me? He's like, after everything we've been through? He's like, do you really think I'm going
anywhere? I'm not giving up now.
He's like, I mean, I've been through 8 of you.
Right. Well, it's true. My friend Ron says a rising tide raises all boats. Like, when you're in that place with those people that you love and that you're connected to, when it's good for you, it's good for them. And this is when something is for you, wild horses could not keep it away.
Correct.
When something is not for you,
it doesn't matter what you do.
Put it in concrete and a cage, and it's still going to find a way to escape your grasp.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
exactly. When so it's trust.
Yes, exactly. And just trusting in yourself, because I think a lack of trust in the universe or God or whatever I call
is a lack of trust of me.
Trust in myself.
Right. Because it's not outside of me.
No. And when I look at my own fears, 99.9% of the time, they never came true in the way that I thought they were going to. And in the
Mhm.
few rare occurrences that they did, I was never without the means to deal with it.
Right.
Right. And that's the other thing is when we're looking at these big dreams and the places we want to go, so often we shut it down immediately because the mind says, well, you can't have that. That's stupid. How are you going to do that? You're not educated for that. You have no frame of reference, blah, blah, blah. So we
Right.
just shut it down. But you're not there yet. So don't
Right.
worry about that. Focus on what's here now. And I promise you, by the time you get there, it will just be the next logical step.
Yeah. Yeah.
It'll make sense.
Absolutely. And, and it's interesting because all the ways that the mind does shut it down, right? It's like the mind is so ready and quick to say, nope, nope, nope. And we have to be the ones, and it's back to that body autonomy. It's back to, can you take command? And it also means, can you take command over this mind who is like, my job is the soldier who keeps you safe and keeps you locked up, and say, nobody, stand your ass down.
Yeah.
Stand down.
Yeah. And you don't have to want it. Mind, you don't have to like it, but this is what we're doing.
Right. Exactly. And
It's like,
but so it's like, I've had to kind of see it like with kids, you may not want to go somewhere, but guess what? You're getting in the car.
yeah, guess what? I'm the grown up and I'm strapping you in the car seat. Here we go. So you kind of have to lovingly do, and that's, I think,
You
a
do.
lot of what it is. You learn how to reparent yourself. You learn how to love yourself
Yeah.
in the way that you want to be or deserved to be or should have been. You learn how to give yourself the things that, because, I think even the most well-meaning parents are still going to, mess their kids up in some way, because how do you know what this person needs? They just came out of you. Aside from food, shelter,
Right.
and clothing and love and a bath, you have no idea what they want. And, back to that
Yeah.
point of programming, to want the best for your child and want their success and joy and happiness and whatever it is, I think is a beautiful thing. And then also to create the space for them to achieve that on their own terms.
Right. Because success means so many different things. It's like my middle one, her entire goal right now is to go live off some land and not be near people. And
My
she's
kind
so
of girl.
funny. I know. And she's so funny. And yet I can see it because she's so in tune with plants. She actually can hear plants speak.
Mm,
And I'm like, go do it. But that could be somebody else's version of a crazy person,
yeah.
you know? But for her, if it makes her happy, then isn't that success? But I remember being her age, I was in college, well, actually a little younger, and I was in college and I wanted to be a teacher. And, and my parents were like, no, there's no money in teaching. So if you're going to do this, you can't live here and we're taking away your car. And I was like, what? I know. Like, yeah, I know. You're like going, what kind of parents do that? I have no idea. And it didn't make any sense, but I switched my major to marketing. Well, guess who dropped out of college?
mm-hmm.
Because there was no passion in it.
Yeah.
And I don't think that true teaching in the school sense, it probably would have really burned me out.
Yeah.
Just because I would have felt so powerless to shift and I wound up starting to teach like character counts and things like that are more up my alley, that gives me more of that creative expression. So maybe their hard detour was, the universe saying, don't
Right.
go in this path because you'll be stuck
Right.
and you won't know how to get out of it. So it very well could have been that, and I can accept it. But you can also see how many people in the world have this vision of success. And if they or their offspring don't toe the line, they are successful. It just doesn't look
Yeah.
like what you thought.
Yeah. I had the same experience, being raised by two teachers who, for them, me going to college and getting a degree and finding a discipline or whatever was the ultimate for them. And I had never, I didn't, I mean, from a young age, I saw the fallacy of our current
Yeah.
education system. I saw how it actually limited people more than it helped them. And I saw how, of course there's exceptions out there, but the mainstream public school system wasn't doing me any favors.
Yeah.
And I saw that, and I just from a young age was but on the other side of that, they also were musicians and music teachers. So they insisted that I take piano from age 5 to 18. And they said, my whole life, when you're 18, you can do whatever you want. But up until that time you're taking it. I am so grateful they insisted on that,
Yeah.
because I know that music, and we know this, studies show it, that music education unlocks parts of the brain that only music education unlocks, or the arts in general. But because I know that was an early laying the foundation for the work I do now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting thing to see again, how everything serves you, even the things that when you're a kid, you're like, oh, I fucking hate this. And my attempt to go to school, go to college was beauty school, and I was a beauty school dropout. How fucking cliche can you get that and I also was in Greece in high school and sang beauty school dropout. That was my,
That's fantastic.
can you get more cliche, the gay kid as a beauty school dropout? But now I can look at it and laugh, but I remember at the time, the idea of dropping it was traumatizing to think that this dream that my parents had, I was going to disappoint them, which, by the way, it was pulling teeth to get me there anyway. So it was such a convoluted thing. I resisted the whole time because I knew it wasn't right for me. But then I finally kind of broke myself and said, fine, I'll go to beauty school. But yeah, it's so interesting. Yeah, it's fascinating to me where we are right now. Is such a powerful time. And we have such a window of opportunity this year to get really, really clear on our own reasons, our own motivations, and is it your fuel that's going in the tank or somebody else's? I think that's a key thing, is continuing to live someone else's agenda, someone else's dream, when it goes against the integrity of what you want for yourself. That, my friends, is the perfect recipe for suffering.
Yes.
Period.
Yep.
Especially in the energetic climate.
Oh, very much so. And we had talked about that. Like, the heavy lifting for others is done. We can't do it anymore. Mm-hmm. It's not in alignment. It's not in integrity.
Right.
Our jobs are to open a door and just say, here I am. You got to come through the door.
Yeah.
And it's just to anchor in that light so that people see an option, because we have existed on this planet for so long when there really didn't feel like there was any options. Mm-mm. There are options now.
Right. And those options don't have to be, hiking through the Himalayas, risking your life to reach the monastery at the top of the hill. Now you can just call someone on the phone.
Right.
So it's much more immediate, but it is, you have to be willing to do it. And we talked about this in our practices. That's one of the reasons that I moved away from single sessions, not because it wasn't valuable work, but because the work I was called to was something new. And my client said, Andrew, you can't do that modality. That format doesn't work anymore, because you are doing a lot of the work for these people to just wake them up and to even get them to consider that, oh, there can be another way. And I needed to do that. I needed to do that. And I'm grateful for all of those clients, but it's that heavy lifting thing. At some point, what I realize is I'm robbing them of their own experience of discovery. Certainly I had my own mentors and people that helped me, but for the most part, I figured this stuff out on my own.
Same. Yeah. I mean, well, I say that, but it was like I had my entire, team of angels.
And on my own, I mean, me and everyone else up there that's part of me.
Yeah.
But I wasn't like I was going to school every day to this, Hogwarts getting, I just wasn't that reality.
So I kind of felt that way.
Yeah.
I really did. And actually, I still do.
It was happening behind the scenes. For me, it happens in dream time. I wake up all the time. I'm like, where was I? I don't even know where I was.
Oh, yeah, me too. Yeah. or the journeys to where I go and I learn something and then I bring it back. So I feel like I'm in constant learning and accepting and growing and bringing it in. And it's been that way for, my gosh, a decade at least. And so I actually like it. Maybe I'm an eternal school junkie.
Yeah, I think it's just the constant unfolding, right?
Yeah.
It's always expanding. The fractal continues to repeat and recur. So I love that, because it takes the pressure off, because then there's no end date, there's no right or wrong. And there's no pressure then. I just do it when I can. And when it feels aligned and, time to do what I do.
Yeah. The only thing that I did find is that, as I've continued on this journey, what I brought in the very beginning and my understanding then, some of it, it's not that it was wrong. I'm not going to use the word wrong, but incomplete.
Yeah, same.
Because I'm unlayered more and my understanding is more. So it's like, I think I understood great for a first grader.
Right.
Now, but I'm not a first grade anymore. So now it's like, it's kind of like math, you're not being thrown algebra right away. You have to build up to it. And so, it's kind of like, it's not that this was wrong, but it was really, really incomplete.
Yeah. Very, very rudimentary or fundamental. Yeah, same. And I love that too. I love being shown where I still have room to grow of my own understanding of even the stuff that I'm supposed to be sharing or whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, but wouldn't you get bored?
yeah.
Yeah,
And you know,
me too.
the truth be told, all the times that I've screamed and shouted, just show me the door and I'll walk through it. If it was just given to me, I'd be like, all right, I'll get around to it. You know, I wouldn't value it. I wouldn't cherish it. That journey of discovery and the journey of understanding and uncovering and unearthing, that is what is so satisfying, because then it's the, oh yes, I finally found the thing. It clicked and I feel it and I know it now. But had it just been handed to me, I wouldn't have valued it. Not in the
Mm-mm.
same way.
Nope.
Not
Nope.
in the same way.
No,
I'm so
not at
glad we
all.
did this.
Me too. Me too. And I don't think it was too squirrel.
We'll rely on the viewers to let us know if we were all
Yeah.
over the map.
We were all over the map like, woo, you two, Jesus.
Yeah. So where can people find you? What's your website and all your channels?
It's jennyschiltz.com, and it's Schiltz. Most people get it wrong, but it's funny. I bought all the different ones, like the websites around it, because
did?
my mother, she messages me and she's like, Jenny, I was trying to get somebody to go to your website and I couldn't find it. I said, Mom, it's my name. She spells it out. I said, Mom, that's not my last name. Like,
You know what? I thought up until just now, I thought it was Schlitz. That's
most
how
people do.
I always pronounced it. I didn't, and now I see, oh, it is Schiltz.
Yeah, it's like Schiltz, and so it's like always a telemarketer. I'd be like, "Is Mrs. Schiltz there?" No.
Nope. Bye. So
No, sorry.
and then are you on Facebook or any other?
I am on Facebook. You can find me under that name as well. It'll pop up. It just is multidimensional healer and intuitive, because most of the work I do is in the quantum field. It's my favorite space. They like me there. And so, yeah. So Andrew, what about you? Where can people find you?
AndrewMartin.energy. So not AndrewMartin.energy.com, just AndrewMartin.energy is my website.
You got like, oh, I like that.
Isn't that cool? And it's funny because when I tell people, like, it's actually an extension for like solar energy, or, you know, it's supposed to, or was created for like energy companies, but that's why I love it. That's my own little rebellion against, you know, like fossil fuel industry, whatever. But yeah, the real kind of energy, not the fake kind of energy.
Right.
Not the man-made kind. So yeah, AndrewMartin.energy, and then Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram are all the same. Andrew Martin Energy, just one word.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, this was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. We'll have to do more once things get crazy and intense again. We'll be called back to do another video.
My God.
Yeah, and I think it is time for me to take a nap. Talking about energy spikes, and it's so weird. I mean, it's fine. I'm used to it at this point, but it's still, there are these passages like the one we're in right now where I'm like, man, what is going on?
Yeah.
So, you know, it's got to be big. I know it is. I know it's major.
And you know, I look at people who work 8-10 hour days and are going through this, and I don't know how they're doing it.
No.
Because this is a lot.
Yeah.
And you know, like my husband, he's actually been napping more and chilling more. And if you know my husband, like mountain biker, snowboarder, like to see him chill, like if he's sitting on the couch midday, I'm like, oh, we're in for it.
Yeah, totally.
Because it's not him, but when he's feeling it, it's intense. And this whole week he's been like, what is wrong with me?
I know, me too. And my stomach is growling. It's like, okay, let's go eat another tiny meal and take a nap so I can be hungry another 45 minutes from now. Oh, all right, honey. Thank you so much. I'm so glad we did this.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye.